Welcome to Idaho Fish and Game's Hook and Bulletin podcast, your weekly news roundup of hunting, fishing, trapping, and conservation stories from around the Gem State. Hosted by Fish and Game's Public Information Specialist, Connor J. Lease.
And welcome back to Idaho Fish and Game's Hook and Bulletin podcast. Holy smokes, we got a lot of fish and game news to get through today. Hopefully you've been spending some quality time in the woods this spring, getting after some gobblers. Hard to imagine it's already almost summer. Haven't even had a chance to get bit by a tick yet. Like I said, we got a lot to talk about this week, including a story about Idaho's first game warden, grizzly bear trapping in the Caribou-Targhee National Forest, and how public input helped shape big game seasons in Southwest Idaho. But first, if you got a good set of eyes, a green thumb, and a desire to become a community scientist, Idaho Fish and Game wants you, yes you, to help us monitor monarch butterflies this summer. The monarch butterfly is an iconic species, so much so, in fact, that even my hometown elementary school adopted them as their mascot. Shout out to Mrs. Lisa's third graders who I've heard like listening to this here Hook and Bulletin podcast. Like some of you, my love of nature started as a Mariposa monarch, playing out in the dirt, catching lizards, those kinds of things. If you kids are listening, keep helping Mrs. Lease tend that classroom garden and stay on top of that homework. A monarch's migration spans thousands of miles, taking upwards of 3 generations of monarchs to complete the journey. Currently, however, their populations are in dire straits due to a wide variety of factors, including drought, pesticides, winter habitat loss, and more. But loss of summer milkweed habitat, of which caterpillars are 100% reliant, continues to be the most significant cause of monarch butterfly population declines. That's where you listeners come in. Idaho Fish and Game needs your help to adopt milkweed patches across the Gem State and monitor the milkweed throughout summer of 2025. The survey kicks off July 1st and goes through August 15th. Volunteer community scientists will need to check their sites 1 to 3 times during this time frame in order to document crucial information like stem counts, health of the patch itself, and, well, count butterflies. Fish and Game manages a very broad range of wildlife, and monarch butterflies are not exempt from these efforts. The information that you collect will help our agency in any future assessments of milkweed and monarchs for any ESA listing decisions. If becoming a community scientist seems like it'll add too much to your plate this summer, don't sweat it. Getting signed up is super easy. Fish and Game will be hosting a virtual training webinar on May 28th from 6 to 8 p.m. Pacific time. There will also be a slew of online training videos and documents to review at your leisure. If you want to dive a little deeper into this and need some more information, check out our statewide milkweed and monitor survey webpage. I'll include the link below. Or contact Joel Sauter, Casey McCormick, and Tempe Reagan at milkweedcommunityscience@idfg.idaho.gov. That's a super long email address. I'll be sure to include that in the notes as well. They're going to be the ones spearheading this project, and we'll be able to help you out. Again, that email is milkweedcommunityscience@idfg.idaho.gov. All right, now this second story by Southwest Regional Communications Manager Brian Pearson is a good one because it shows that despite a few naysayers out there, we at Idaho Fish and Game do actually listen to you. We listen to what you have to say and are passionate about. And when it comes to setting seasons, our staff do take public input into consideration. So here's a perfect example of that in Southwest Idaho. When hunters peek through online or thumb through their copy of the 2025 Big Game Seasons and Rules Regs for the first time, they should take note of several changes to seasons in the Southwest region and understand how those changes came to be. This season setting process began with biologists and managers assessing wildlife populations and the capacity to sustain harvest, as well as where those populations stand compared to the guidelines established in Fish and Game species management plans. The process ended with the Fish and Game Commission considering department staff recommendations and making decisions that are reflected in the 2025 Big Game brochure. The most important part of that process is what happened in between, the presentation of the preliminary proposals to the public and the opportunity for people to provide feedback. Prior to the March Commission meeting, regional wildlife staff across the state hosted public meetings to provide interested sportsmen and women the opportunity to meet face-to-face and discuss proposals. That included a total of 5 in the Southwest region, including meetings in Nampa, Mountain Home, Weiser, Council, and McCall. Recognizing that not everyone has the time to attend an evening meeting, Fish and Game staff also prepared videos that summarized proposals. The meetings and presentations included descriptions of each proposed change, the rationale behind it, and where the ideas came from in the first place. In total, 1,831 people reviewed and provided feedback about the initial season proposals for the Southwest region. Before presenting final recommendations to the Commission, regional wildlife staff evaluated all that feedback and identified opportunities to adjust proposals within biological limits and management plan objectives. Here's Regan Berkeley, Southwest Region Wildlife Manager in McCall.
In many cases, the adjustments we make to initial season proposals in response to public input are an effort to find a balance. Our goal is to be as responsive as we can to public input while still making recommendations to the Commission that move us towards biological objectives for a given population. In several cases this year, we found the space to do that.
Here's where public input resulted in adjustments for the Southwest region. For Weiser River elk, Fish and Game staff completed an aerial survey of the Weiser River zone in late January. That survey confirmed that Weiser elk are well above objectives and trending upward from the previous survey. The original proposal that was scoped with the public included shifting private land-only dates back by 2 weeks on the Weiser River Zone B-tag and removing the quota from the B-tag. This proposal aimed to provide additional opportunity to hunters and reduce the elk population towards the objective range identified in the elk management plan. Fish and Game staff received a total of 175 responses to this proposal, which included 113 written comments. Roughly 40% of people who responded supported the original proposal, while 60% did not. A couple of common themes came out of the comments provided by folks who didn't support the proposal. Namely, they had concerns about creating additional congestion and overlap between the archery and rifle seasons. Among the folks who supported the proposal, commenters generally appreciated the increased opportunity and proposed bringing back some cow hunting on the A-tag. The final season proposal that Southwest Region staff sent to the Commission for consideration and that ultimately ended up in the 2025 Seasons and Rules booklet was aimed at addressing these common themes while still moving the population towards objectives. The modified proposal kept the current private land-only dates on the B-tag, shortened the end date on the public land portion of the B-tag, and added any weapon A-tag antlerless opportunity in Unit 32 only.
The modifications to the proposal helped alleviate archers' concerns about overlap between rifle and archery hunting, and helped reduce hunter congestion by shifting some hunters to the A-tag, while still maintaining harvest during November. Adding late November private land-only hunts should help push elk off of private land, or at least help avoid elk being pushed onto private land.
Next, we got Unit 39 mule deer. There were several proposals related to mule deer in Unit 39, all of which were geared at improving herd health. For years, there have been indications that the mule deer in Unit 39 have been nearing carrying capacity. Fawn weights, which biologists collect when they capture and GPS collar mule deer fawns for survival monitoring, were below average again this year, suggesting that deer are competing for limited resources. In other words, the initial proposals looked to increase herd health by increasing antlerless harvest, resulting in fewer does competing for forage, which would increase fawn weights and ultimately fawn survival. Two of the initial proposals were to reduce tag numbers in the Unit 39-43 either sex controlled hunt and create a new extra antlerless controlled hunt in Unit 39. A majority of the responses to these two proposals were not supportive, and at the same time, biologists were surveying the deer population in Unit 39. The population survey showed decreasing mule deer numbers since the last survey in 2018. Based on the data from the Abundance Survey, biologists felt comfortable removing these two proposals altogether. Here's Ryan Walrath, Regional Wildlife Manager in Nampa.
We still believe we have an issue with herd health in Unit 39, and the signs point to the herd nearing or possibly recently exceeding carrying capacity. But given the population decrease observed in this year's survey, we believe we can manage antlerless harvest adequately under the current season model, including general season and controlled youth hunting opportunity and either sex controlled hunts for now.
All right, lastly, we got black bears, specifically in the Weiser area. Fish and Game staff scoped several proposals with the public for Units 22, 31, 32, and 32A. For Units 22, 31, and 32A, a common thread in the initial proposals was to redefine the general hunt boundary from, quote, on or within 1 mile of private land, end quote, to, quote, outside the National Forest system boundary, end quote. The reasoning behind this proposed change was mostly related to enforcement challenges under the current boundaries. In Unit 22, 31, and 32, initial proposals also included adding hound hunting opportunities during October 1st through the 9th. Seasons in Unit 32 were proposed to shift from unlimited controlled hunts to general hunts. In Unit 32A, additional proposals revolved around the need to reduce black bear harvest, including eliminating spring and fall baiting and spring hound hunting.
Harvest had increased more dramatically than anticipated in Unit 32, following relatively recent changes in allowable methods of take for the general season. That, coupled with the lava fire, which impacted about a quarter of bear habitat in the unit last summer, led us to believe that both the bear population and controlled hunt quality could be negatively affected if we didn't make some changes.
The public generally supported proposed changes to black bear hunts in Unit 32. However, the public generally did not support proposed changes in 32A, nor in 22 or 31. This was mostly because they felt proposed changes to general hunt boundaries would reduce hunting opportunity in bear harvest, and they opposed any reduction in hound hunting opportunity. Ultimately, the scoping process resulted in Fish and Game staff modifying their black bear season proposals in Units 22, 31, and 32A by not implementing the proposed change to the general hunt area boundary in those units. Additionally, hound hunting dates in Unit 32 were modified to include the last 2 weeks of September, in addition to the first 9 days of October included in the original proposal. That is all I got on that story. Pretty much covered it from head to toe, but if you feel like reading Brian Pearson's article, hit the link below. Now, we don't get to cover Fish and Game history all that often, and when Fish and Game's unofficial historian Sharon Clark and enforcement chief Greg Wooten sent over this story along with a super sick photograph from the 1890s, you bet your gold watch and chain that I jumped at writing about Idaho's first game warden. As Idaho Fish and Game rounds out a year of celebrating its 125th anniversary, the Idaho Conservation Officers Association, or ICOA, has taken steps to officially recognize and honor Idaho's first state game warden by placing a memorial stone at his gravesite. Back when Idaho was admitted to the Union in 1890 by President Benjamin Harrison, very few laws were in place to protect Idaho's vast fish and game resources. In 1899, when Idaho's 5th legislative session enacted new fish and game laws, they included a provision that went like this.
For the appointment of state fish and game warden, and to provide for the protection of fish and game.
On May 5, 1899, Governor Frank Studenberg appointed 36-year-old Charles H. Arbuckle, a member of Idaho's House of Representatives, to the office of State Game Warden. Arbuckle stated in the first biennial report of the State Fish and Game Warden, quote, "Prior to the creation of this department, various laws for the protection of game and fish have been upon our statute books. They were framed with the best intent, but all have been practically inoperative because no person felt fully authorized to enforce them," end quote. During his 2-year appointment, Arbuckle successfully started hiring deputy game wardens across the state to enforce the new laws. In January of 1917, then state game warden Leroy C. Jones said of Arbuckle, quote, "To the first fish and game warden of the state, the sportsmen are indebted. He placed the first check on the slaughter of birds and game animals and did the pioneer work in laying the foundation on which the department could grow to its present proportions," end quote. Also, in his biennial report, Arbuckle made several recommendations he felt were needed, not only administratively, but in the interest of Idaho's fish, game, and for sportsmen. Some of his recommendations included a license be required for men to hunt and fish. This became a law in 1903, and preventing serious fish loss by blocking them from going into irrigation canals and ditches. In 1905, the construction and use of the Buck Fishway was endorsed by State Game Warden W.N. Stevens, as well as the use of revolving fish screens to exclude fish from canals and ditches. Arbuckle also petitioned Idaho's congressional representatives for the establishment of a government fish hatchery. Although it would take years before a federal fish hatchery was built in Idaho, in 1907 a legislative act authorized and directed the department to erect and maintain a state fish hatchery. Hayspur, Idaho's first fish hatchery, is still in operation today. The general election in November 1900 brought change to Idaho, including a newly elected governor. Arbuckle knew this change would result in the appointment of a new state game warden. He resigned 3 months before his term expired, allowing his successor to assume office sooner than later. Prior to being elected as an Idaho representative, Arbuckle was a miner and a businessman. After his term of state game warden, he would continue to work in the field of enforcement, including chief of detectives for Boise Police and as a U.S. Marshal. For a few months during the winter of 1912 through 1913, he served as secretary to Senator Perkey. In 1938, with the passage of the Idaho Fish and Game Commission Act People's Initiative, Office of the State Game Warden was abolished, and the position of Fish and Game Director was then created. In an interview with the Idaho Statesman in December 1938, Arbuckle expressed support for the new management structure of the Fish and Game Department. He passed away in Boise in 1945 at the ripe old age of 82. Arbuckle pioneered a critical element of our codified mission as the first protector of wildlife. Idaho conservation officers remain committed to this today and will carry the torch into the future. We'd all here at Fish and Game like to wish a very special thank you to members of the Idaho Conservation Officers Association. Because of them, this memorial has been made possible. The ICOA was founded in 1980 and is comprised of nearly every conservation officer working in the state of Idaho. These men and women are responsible for the enforcement of Idaho's state law with a focus on the protection and management of fish and wildlife within our beautiful state. The association provides a place for conservation officers to share experiences, a common love of wildlife, and connect with national organizations such as the North American Wildlife Officers Association and the National Fraternal Order of Police. Speaking for myself, I think the history of state game and fish agencies is incredibly fascinating, in case you couldn't tell. I'm an Idaho history nerd, as Beery has alluded to before, and I keep trying to get Sharon Clark on here to share some more stories from Idaho's Fish and Game's early days. You would not believe some of the stories and artifacts she has archived from decades of wildlife research. If that sounds like something we should do an episode on, let us know. Write in to podcast@idfg.idaho.gov, and I'll see if I can coerce Sharon into coming on the podcast. That is it for major stories this week. Let's hit the rapid-fire bulletin. As part of ongoing efforts to monitor the population of grizzly bears in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, biologists from Idaho Fish and Game will begin annual research trapping grizzly bears in the Upper Snake region beginning in May. Trapping will occur in the Caribou-Targhee National Forest within the Caldera and Island Park, along the Centennial Mountain Range, and in the Cave Falls/Teton areas near the Wyoming border. Research trapping operations should be wrapped up near the end of August. Data collected from both sexes provides the estimated survival rate, age structure, causes of mortality, and a better understanding of habitat use and food habits. Whenever bear capture activities are being conducted for scientific purposes, the area around the site will be posted with bright warning signs to inform the public of the activities that are going on. These signs are posted along the major access points in the capture site's perimeter. It is extremely important that the public heed these signs and not venture into posted areas. Controlled hunt drawing results for moose, bighorn sheep, and mountain goat are out now. Hunters who applied for a controlled hunt for moose, bighorn sheep, and mountain goat hunts can see if they drew a tag by going to www.gooutdoorsidaho.com. The second application period for unissued moose, bighorn sheep, and mountain goat tags will be June 15th through the 25th. Any tags available to apply for can be found on our website, so hit the link below. Okay, folks, that's it for this week's stories. It's time for our question of the week. This week's question comes to us from podcast listener Annie W. Annie asks, can you use archery equipment to hunt waterfowl, other migratory birds, pheasants, sage grouse with a tag, and sandhill cranes with a tag? I know you can archery hunt turkey and grouse, but had never considered it for other birds. Hey Annie, good question, and thanks for throwing this one our way. Short answer is yes, you can totally use archery equipment to hunt other game birds. However, most might argue that it's not a very effective weapon choice for harvesting. Waterfowl have large breasts that often shield the internal organs. In addition, they have small heads, which if you're going to go for a headshot, that's a pretty small target. Assistant Chief of our Enforcement Bureau, Joey Ishida, says he's collected a number of ducks and geese that have had arrows or blow darts in them, and the sad reality is most of them survive, and it's a royal pain trying to capture and treat them. Hope this helps. That's all the news we have for this week. Thanks for putting an ear to Idaho Fish and Game's Hook and Bulletin. If there's something on your mind or if you got a question related to fish and game matters, feel free to drop us a line at podcast@idfg.idaho.gov. Again, that's podcast@idfg.idaho.gov. Thanks for listening, folks. We'll catch you next week.